Hello and welcome to season 2 of the Mystic Nerd Squad podcast. I am your host, the original Mystic Nerd, Kelly Meyerson, and I host candid conversations for the curious. If you're here and you're curious, you found us and you're in the right spot. This evening, I am joined by my co-author and friend, Morrighan Lynne. She is a renowned spiritual medium, psychic empath, clairvoyant, intuitive coach, and published author. With a fiery gypsy soul and an eclectic approach to spirituality, she supports the ever-evolving human with compassion, straightforwardness, and loving accountability. She wrote Chapter 6, The Making of an Empath, How Trauma Molds the Sensitive Soul, in the lovely book that you see behind me over here, Sacred Medicine, lead author Jen P. Sano on that one. And that is how Morrighan and I met. And I just knew from the moment I met her that she was an exceptional soul in the world. So, Morrighan, I'm so excited to have you here on the Mystic Nerd Squad podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, honey. I'm really happy to be here with you. I'm excited for what we shall uncover together.
Yes. So when we were chatting a few weeks ago about what to do on this show, because as you'll find with many of my guests, they have so many different areas in which they work. And I want them to bring like their best on the first episode we do together. So we're going to be talking about trauma and how it impacts our intuition and our inner wisdom. And I'm so excited for this topic because so many of us hear about trauma. And I think a great place to start is, how would you define trauma?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really great place to start because I think it is a confusing concept because we think of the very big things in our lives and we can kind of think, well, I don't have those big moments in my life to cause trauma. So how it was put to me just very simply is trauma is too much energy, too fast, and too soon. And so if you think about the rush of energy, the rush of stimuli coming upon your nervous system, it's whether or not your nervous system could handle that amount of energy that quickly and at that much force. And so it redefines what trauma is for me because it means it's not always car accidents or near-death experiences or things like that. It's not always divorce or moving or changing of jobs, not the big things that we think about. It can be you're having the best day ever at your favorite baseball team and they hit a pop fly and that ball comes right at your face and hits you, even though you're having a great time, that can be traumatic. And so it really shifts the way I want people to think about what trauma is for them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I feel like there was just a news story recently with a woman who was hit in the head with a baseball. So that's a very timely example there. So what happens when someone experiences a traumatic event? How does it then make that impact on our intuition and our inner wisdom? What actually happens?
Well, backing up just a hair behind that is when we have these energetic stimuli that come into our field, come into our system. The actual act isn't what trauma is. It's whether or not our body processes the stimuli. Because you can have a traumatic moment, but you process the energy and move it out of your system, and you don't become traumatized. And so there's a little bit of a shift of awareness around that, because what I'm starting to notice is very simply, when we have an event that hurts, whether or not we're supported matters. Because I think what traumatized is when we start having to stuff it down because we don't feel validated, we don't feel safe, we don't feel secure in our surroundings to be able to process that emotionally, right? And so how that translates in the intuition field is my many years of working with people in intuition is if you don't feel safe, you won't open to the unseen, to the unheard, to the unknown in the intuitive field, right? So safety is such a huge thing for humans because we're wired for survival. And so it starts getting into this really great mishmash of what the heck is blocking that very natural intuitive flow. And it's the lack of safety.
Wow. I think that is probably such a big aha moment for people. I know it is for me. And I've, read up on this and I've been working through my own stuff, but I think you just explained it so beautifully
Mm.
that it's sort of like a wall goes up because you're not safe and you're not willing to be vulnerable and experiencing things that are unseen or unknown because you don't have that baseline of safety. And I think the other piece that you shared is so important because I'm sure, like a lot of people, I used to feel like if you're experiencing trauma, like then you're going to be traumatized and it's going to be a problem moving forward. So that
Mm-hmm.
avoidance of any moment that could be potentially traumatic, right?
Right.
But what I hear you saying is that if we could learn to be more supportive of people and to be asking for the support that we need in order to remain safe and secure, really horrific or potentially traumatic moments could be processed in the moment and could not live in the body as they do or have that impact on you long term.
100%.
Yeah.
100%, because I don't, yeah, the amount of traumatization is not equal to the amount of trauma you experience because you can be processing things. That's why two people in the same car accident, one can walk away untraumatized and the other one is traumatized. It just depends on how, and it starts getting very nuanced and individual, but I feel like it's how well are we supported? And individually for ourselves as well. Like, are we invalidating our experience? Are we hating that we had, are we not supportive to ourselves? That causes the energy to start stuffing down. And we know where that ends up. That just ends up with lifelong trauma and issues and all the things that snowballs from that space. But I really feel like it's the simplicity of, are we being heard? Are we being seen? And are we safe?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And no better time than now to talk about this because immediately what comes to me is how are we building that resiliency, like one on a level for ourselves as adults, but for children for whom these times could be potentially traumatizing or traumatic to them. So how do
Yeah.
we build that resiliency?
Yeah. Yeah. It is an interesting time. And I think, minus pandemic, I think this is a timely conversation in general anyway, because I feel like our generation, I feel like we stepped in to be these cycle breaker people. And so our parents and their parents didn't talk about emotions. They didn't talk about how was that experience for you? They really sucked it up. They're like, well, you just get back to work, right? And so not
Mm-hmm.
only on a timeline of evolutionary process for humanity, I feel like it's timely, but oh yeah, let's enter this pandemic phase where what we thought is true is not true anymore. And there's a lack of safety, there's a lack of trust
Mm-hmm.
collectively in our society right now. And so we have a lot of work to do. I just know that. I know that
So
we're going
true.
to be running around and we're going to be healing this for a few years. There's some things that are, yeah, that this is a timely moment right now.
Yeah, I feel that too. And I think what I've witnessed or observed, so many people who sort of hadn't yet approached their inner healing and really started to analyze themselves had been existing in a very unconscious level. And that's not at a judgment, that's just,
Mhm.
observationally, that they were forced to face truths in their lives when the busyness, like you said, like just keep working, just keep doing, just keep achieving, kept them so busy that they didn't have time for that quiet time to see, oh my gosh, I'm not really safe. There are some things that are making me unsafe. you know, it seems like this has kind of stirred up a lot for people who maybe would have avoided it entirely if not this opportunity had come up in 2020 with quarantining and being in a lot of stillness and quiet and time alone.
Yeah, I have my own theories around like what's happening, right? And not negating what is happening on an individual planetary level, that people are hurting, people are dying. I understand that part. But when we get into the macrocosm of it, get in the bigger picture, I feel like it's giving us the opportunity to get down to what's really important for ourselves. On it, every individual person gets to decide that for themselves, but that's coming at a great cost. I do get it. I'm not a overly toxic positivity person. I do understand that real things are happening, but I also see the potential of what it's offering us on a collective level. So it's a interesting conversation to navigate.
I know,
Yeah.
right? So so tell me a little bit more about when someone is feeling like they're shut off from their intuition and they have had these traumatic moments in life, been traumatized. So how does that work begin? What are some of the first steps that someone could take?
When I start working with someone, the first thing I want to do is, well, first, I feel like education is power. I feel like
Mm,
knowing what something is called. And so we start talking about what a clairvoyant is and what a clairaudient is and all the different, everyone is intuitive. Everyone has access to that, but we all have our own magic. And so it's not always going to be like mine won't look like yours and yours won't look like theirs and on and on. And so first we get into an educational process to understand terminology, because then there's oh, I know what that is. I had that. And so then the pieces start coming together. Inevitably, though, we start digging into what are you afraid of? Like really just basic, like this is available for you. What's keeping you from it? And those traumas, those barriers are going to uh, it's a vast spectrum of what could possibly be there, right? They could have been a child and seen spirits, and then that was too much to handle, and that shut it down. Or maybe they had a great grandmother that was psychic, and everyone thought she was crazy, and so that child didn't want to be like them, so they shut it down. And so
mhm,
there's a variable, endless list of reasons why they could be traumatized around that. And so basically, we start troubleshooting. We start like, what are you worried about? 9 times out of 10, it's I fear judgment of others. Like, what are people gonna think of me? And so
mhm.
we just start healing the trauma around that, because I feel like you're not ever going to fix it out there. You're not going to get people like everyone. Like, let's just say if someone's afraid of judgment from their family members and they're waiting for their family members to accept them before they're willing to open up this intuitive space, that's never going to happen. Like, you can't
No.
wait long enough for people to get it. So going out to fix the external doesn't work. So we go in and we heal that fear of rejection or that fear of abandonment, because that's where it's tied into. Because I feel like when one accepts self for who they are, we begin to not really care what other people think.
So true.
So go in, get that all yummy and juicy, and then who cares? Like, good for you if you don't like it. And then that conviction begins to build, and then trust begins to heal, and then now you have that space to feel safe enough to have the opening to what's already there.
Yeah. I love that personally because I feel like I resisted for so long just like being who I am and like, that like spiritual hiding of like, well, I'm really into science, but I'm really into the spiritual world and
Yeah.
probably did see dead people when I was a kid and I definitely have always been tuned in to the
Yeah.
spirit world. And it's so
Yeah.
funny because I had family visiting And I was talking to my cousin about some of the things that I've been into. And she's like, well, you were always really into that stuff. And I was like, I guess I was. I guess I sort of forgot that about myself. When you're a kid, you have so much more freedom a lot of times to just explore. And nobody has yet told you that that's weird or odd or not something that typical people do, So yeah, I can totally relate to what you're saying.
Yeah, we have permission when we're kids, right? Because you're supposed to have an imagination. You're supposed to have imaginary friends and talk to fairies and like all of that weird stuff that we're told as adults. We need to just grow up and get over it because now you're in the real world, and that's when we begin to shut it down. And I love my job because I want to reconnect people to that. It's still there. It didn't go away just because we are older than 14 now. Like it doesn't have a door that shuts at some age. It's still available.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I think for so many people, it's so freeing to be able to feel into the nature of that and what you were born with and how you felt and the freedom. I feel like that's like such a big piece of what I've felt over the past couple of years,
Yeah.
that I just feel so much more freedom to just be and do and have what feels right for me, and sort of do that with blinders for, would this make sense? Would this life make sense for someone else? Probably not. And that's okay.
Right.
But when I'm modeling and living into this aspect of my life, I'm showing other people how you can just be who you are and that uniqueness. And like, imagine, these are the things I love to imagine. Like, imagine if everyone just started living into the purest sense of themselves, and what would that feel like?
Yeah.
That would feel so good, and what would that offer our lives, that we all don't all need to be following this same exact path, but if we're following our path and our intuition,
Yeah.
then what would that do to the world? It's sort of
Uh,
rhetorical, but
yes, but I can feel the energy of what you're talking about because it would ripple into this planet. We'd have instantaneous shift. The consciousness would awaken instantly all across the world. And yeah, that feels so good. I will hold that with you because I think that's possible.
yeah, I felt that with the Sacred Medicine Project. I
Mm-hmm.
really felt like the people that came to that project, of course, through Jen, who just had like these feelers out in the world and that magic sense. And when we first all got on a Zoom together, I was like, ooh, this is exciting. This has
Yeah,
this palpable energy that I've never felt before, but I want more and more and more of it.
yeah. It was tickly. It was very tingly
Exactly.
I loved it. It was effervescent. I could feel that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was a little bit
Mm.
intoxicating in a way, because it was like, oh, I don't know. I haven't ever felt this much energy at one time, like rippling through my aura. And I was
Mm.
like, this is amazing. I just need more of this. But
Mm.
imagine for everyone. Yeah. So that's
Yeah,
my own little wish into the world. It's for
yeah,
everyone to just live into the truest sense of themselves. Um, yeah.
yeah.
So what would be next then? Tell us a little bit more about, so someone has gone through this process with you. They've sort of figured out what those barriers are, what those fears are. What's the best way to start working through those?
Just feeling into that because it goes a million different directions depending, right? Because it
Mm.
depends on the flavor of trauma. It depends on how willing they are to access that because there are really deep things that happen in this work where it could be past life trauma too. Like some of my work goes into those past life wounds where we've had so many centuries of persecution, and so it's deep. It goes deep, deep, deep in there. Um, this most simplest way I could put it is we begin to reparent the part of us that was wounded because we weren't supported in that moment. So like say you were 5 years old and you saw spirits and your family was telling you were crazy and you need to just like suck it up and grow up and all that stuff, right? So you just shut it down, turned off the third eye, just shut everything down, right? So we might go back in there with a reparenting process of you as this current version of yourself, going back to that 5-year-old version and giving her permission to be scared. It's okay that you're scared. Like validating that, because we weren't validated, right?
Mm-hmm.
So going back and validating, I call them the littles. So validating the littles, giving them the space to feel seen and heard, because there's this quantum shift that happens. It's the closest thing to time travel I've ever witnessed without actually traveling. Going back and reparenting these parts of us that are still, I see them as time capsules. They're still holding on
Mm-hmm.
to that trauma. So going back and visiting them and giving them the space to relax that and release that will then ripple effect into who you are now, because you obviously are connected to them, but they're still holding that trauma, which then ripples into you anytime you get close to any spiritual conversation that will re-traumatize. And so we just go backwards instead of going out and fixing what's in front of us. We actually go backwards and fix. I don't like that word. Honor that space. Honor that space of like who's holding that trauma. And so it's delicate. It's individual, but that's the easiest. That's the formula of going back and
Mm-hmm.
reparenting and giving them permission to feel unnerved and feel scared and feel sad because they're not being heard and honored. And whenever we do that, they heal, and then you are healed.
Yeah, I just love that. And I think it's such sweet and delicate work, you
Yeah.
know? And
Yes.
if you can do that, I mean, imagine the kind of kindness you can give yourself now, right? If you can spend a little time with little you, then big you sort of feels like, "Oh, all right. So maybe when I'm feeling a little cranky, I can just be like, "Hey, hon,
Mm,
what's wrong? Why are you feeling so cranky? What is it that you really need right now?" You know,
exactly.
is it self-care? Is it food? Are you hangry? You know? And you could be a little more gentle with yourself, because I think that that conditioning of "Suck it up, buttercup," like, keep going, just push, 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 yeah,
Yeah.
is
We're
is
real
so
hard on
pervasive.
ourselves. Yeah. Yeah, I'm giggling a little inside because my trauma mentor, with whom I'm done this work with and certified through, she has a statement that we say when you start feeling hard on yourself or you start noticing an activation, a trigger, and you put your hands on your heart and you go, "Oh, honey, I'm noticing this. Like I'm noticing you're having this moment of fear, blah, 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 whatever." And in the beginning, I hated that statement. I hated it. I felt so dumb. Like I just felt so like, all
Mhm.
right, oh honey. And I told her in the class one time, I said, "Look, I love you." I said, "But I feel really dumb doing that. It feels really awkward and clumsy and weird." And she just looked at me and she said, "Well, that just tells me how mean you are to yourself."
Oh,
And I'm all, "Oh, stab. That's the
truth.
truth. Truth." Yeah. And so working with that statement and just putting my hand on my heart with compassion and empathy for myself has taught me to be nicer to myself. And so I have a way different conversation with my internal self, even when I'm having a bad day or I'm hangry or whatever is happening. It's so much softer. And that one little shift has shifted my entire life. Like it's such a big deal to be nice to
Yeah,
ourselves. Huge, huge.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's such a great process. I love the way that's put. And probably me like a couple of years ago, I would have been like, "Ooh, I don't think I want to do that. That sounds a little weird." But
Yeah.
yeah, I've sort of gotten into the practice of just, when I notice, like, I'm like, "Ooh, that's interesting." Like, that's my first response. "That's interesting. What's happening here?"
Yep.
What am I feeling right now? And then it might be, okay. And I might audibly say, what is it that you need right now?
Yeah.
Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And it's so interesting when you speak those words out loud. It's very different than when you're thinking it in your head.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
even more like the next level is when I talk to those littles, I'll just say, I'm noticing you. What do you need right now? And it's different. It's even one level deeper because I'm externalizing that inner child part of me. And so it's a instead of imagining it's my own voice to me right now, there's something softer about talking to a child. Like I would never
Mm-hmm.
tell them to suck it up.
Right. No, that doesn't feel right.
No,
Yeah.
ew,
I
no.
completely agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. It feels so different, you
Yeah.
know. So the work that you do is so individualized, like you said. So, how is it different than like just reading a book or taking a class and like where people can just take in this information? What is it about, this actual work that people are doing that makes the bigger difference?
Hmm. Well, I love education. Education is power. Of course, read the books and have the terminology and have the like get everyone's take on certain topics if that interests you. But you have your own road. You have your own life's trajectory. Your soul said it wanted something, so you're very individual that way. That means you have your own traumas, your own baggage, your own emotional wounding. uh, we are not cookie cutter type people. Like we're all human, but we've all had our own array of experiences that have shaped us. And so it is the difficult part when you want to try and get that level of healing out of a book. A book
Mhm.
cannot take you there. It cannot
Mm.
take you into the individualism of your own trauma. And our psyche is actually built to create barriers around things like that. So, having someone on the outside, someone like me that can hold and witness, I'm going to see things that you don't see. I'm watching
Mm.
body language and listening to inflections in voice. And when people start fidgeting or they start shrinking in themselves, like I'm noticing that, but that's the trigger space. They're not going to see themselves in that space. And so please read the books, please go have all the education, but to really access those deeper levels of trauma spaces, you need a guide. You need someone to walk into the dark with you because you're not going to see everything. I have coaches for that reason. I don't see
Mm.
everything. And I'm still
Mhm.
really good at my own work, but working with my trauma coach, like she has dug up things in me that I didn't even know were there because we
Mhm.
just have these I always see them as like horse blinders. We just have these blinders on because we can't see everything. We would not be able to process it. So our psyche doles out just what we can handle at a little bit of a time. But if you
Right.
want to get in there, having a guide really helps you because they're going to see things you don't see.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's super important. And I think some of the best work that I've done on trauma and healing inner issues, especially the inner child wounds,
Yeah.
one of mine that was sort of the biggest inner child wound was, being in first grade and my teacher seemed to hate me because I came from Montessori and I went into public school and I was just not really very like
Acclimated.
focused, organized. Like I didn't understand the structure and function of a public school
Oh,
classroom at that point in time. And so, she really picked on me and made me do extra homework. And I just developed this very like, I don't like authority. I don't like following rules. But at the same time, my trauma response was I can understand and learn the rules before anybody else, and I can tell everybody what the rules are, you know?
because you'll get there first and then you're not
Mhm.
last. Yeah, I get that.
Mhm. And then I'm not getting in, quote unquote trouble. So,
I,
yeah, so doing some healing around that with someone and just like you said that ability to hold space for 7-year-old me and not be like, "No, no, no, you can't have a temper tantrum and fit about that. Like you have like quiet down." but letting her sort of tell me how angry she is and how hurt she is, and it wasn't fair and nobody was standing up for her. She felt alone, and being like, wow, that must have been really hard. And then, she literally was like, yeah, all right, I gotta go play. It's like,
She's like, I
off.
just wanted to say it out loud.
I'm good. Thank you for hearing me, but I gotta go play. I'm busy, So it doesn't necessarily have to be like deep and dark, but that work being done was like a huge floodgate of, me being able to exist as my own self and not feel like, oh, is everybody going to approve of this? Or I don't know. I could do,
Yeah.
oh, well, I want the people who are going to enjoy this to enjoy it. But if they don't approve of it, it's not for them anyway. So who cares? Right.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
I
So
think
I want you to go ahead,
so I was
please.
just gonna say one last thing. I think the most surprising thing for me doing this work is just speaking to what you were saying about your inner child, is when we go in there, we cannot expect what their reaction is going to be, because I have been surprised more often than not of their reaction of what was going on. And it's such a fascinating moment because I think I know what they're going to feel like. I was there. I know what they felt like, right? Going in there and asking, how are you? What do you need right now? And being just completely speechless of their response, because I didn't expect that. That fascinates me to no end.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I agree. And I wonder if like as adults we sort of over intellectualize,
Yeah.
and forget that children really they don't intellectualize things. They feel things. They go with their gut. Like they don't know any different until they've been conditioned any different. But yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh, such a good conversation. So I want to give you a few minutes. You first of all, you all need to go over to her website, which is just absolutely gorgeous. First of all, just visually stunning, and there is so much beautiful work that you're putting out into the world. I'd love for you to just share with us some of the things that you have going on right now, coming up, and how people can connect with you more.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. So, I've got some little irons in the fire right now that I'm not 100% ready to talk about, but it's going to be my legacy. So it definitely is going to be the work around. I work with a lot of empaths, the intuitive process of that with the trauma process of that, and so I will be launching something very soon, and I want everyone to come play with me. So there's that. But I do have a lot of really beautiful starter things on my website. So there's a few freebies on there, master classes. I have a couple of back to the basic type self-study programs. I believe in the foundation. I think that I know we're all human and we're all different, but we are also essentially like our automobile. We need the same maintenance, we need the same gasoline, oil, washer fluid, tire pressure. Yes, we're all different, but we're not really that different. So I truly believe in the foundational work of that. And so the back to the basics, there's back to the basic alignment and back to the basics intuition. And so I feel like when you have those strong foundational spaces, then your life really starts growing. And so those are available right now for anybody when you feel called to do that. And then when you sign up for one of my freebies, you're going to be on my mailing list to stay tuned to my super secret thing that I'm going to be launching really soon. I'm so excited. So I'm trying to hold it all in because I don't do that very well. I want to tell everybody everything right away, but I'm like, no, 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 it's not time. It's not time. So that's that. So you can stay in the know whenever I'm ready to ta-da.
Oh, well, oh my goodness. You're gonna have to promise to come back and when you're ready to reveal, to share with the listeners what you have going on. And
Deal.
so she told you you better get on there and take advantage of some of those freebies so you can get on the mailing list, because now I'm absolutely curious and want to know, as someone who identifies as an empath, I want to know what you're up to. And you said legacy work, so I know it's got to be really incredible. Wow.
Yes.
Oh
When
my
I die,
gosh.
this is what I want to be known for. Like that's how much I'm excited about it.
Oh my gosh. Ooh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm so
Mm-hmm.
excited. All
Oh,
right.
yeah.
I want to be like on the first line of communication for that. Whenever you're ready to start sharing,
You got it. You
you're going to
got
have
it.
to send me a message. So, oh my gosh, Morrighan, I want to thank you so much for coming on. This has been such a wonderful conversation. I'm sure all of our listeners were enjoying hearing all about intuition and trauma, and you've given us some really good first steps for how to work through those things. And I'm really excited. If you are enjoying the Mystic Nerd Squad podcast, Candid Conversations for the Curious, please go ahead and follow, like, and share the podcast. And if you have a little extra time, I would love if you could give us a review. Now available on Apple and Spotify. I want to thank you once again, Morrighan, for being here, for sharing your light with the world. And I wish everybody wellness and follow your curiosity. You never know where it may lead you. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.